Okay, so we have a chart here to explore, and it's a male chart, and it's a mystery chart. So we'll look at the chart, and then we'll find out who the chart belongs to. So there's a few different places you can start. And when we look at a chart, the sun, the moon, and the ascendant are, of course, the predominant indicators of the main personality of somebody. And so obviously, if we're looking at it from the third stage astrology vantage point, we're looking at Gemini, and we're looking at the 3 stages of Gemini with an awareness that the person is going to be somewhere in that continuum of what Gemini is about. Now, have you looked at a whole lot of stuff about Gemini in my book?
I don't know that I've read the Gemini chapter. I always read it when I meet someone. I haven't met a lot of Geminis, but I know what I do know about Gemini is it's not like 2 people, but there's like 2 layers to them, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, everybody has those same 2 layers, which is the conscious, rational, mental part of us, and the emotional, really the front brain and the midbrain. So the emotional, sensitive feeling side. We all have those 2 sides. Now, what's interesting about Gemini is, and we'll probably do a whole thing about Gemini, that which we can link to right here. And that is that Gemini's purpose is to be a scout that goes ahead of the rest of humanity in order to show us what we need to do next in our evolution. And the short version is, in first stage, they're developing their skills and talents in order to do that, and they don't have a lot of contact with other people. So it means that their intellectual part of them develops much more than the emotional side. The emotional side has had no support, no nurturing, no ability to interact with other people. When they get to the end of first stage, they show their great discoveries, and people either put them on a giant pedestal, or more often, they're too far ahead of their time and they get rejected and people freak out. And Gemini is traumatized by that. Yeah. So then they go into second stage Gemini, and second stage Gemini does one of 3 things. It either says, what did I do wrong? I'll be good, I'll please everybody. And they're the good child Gemini who sells themselves short. Or they think, how could you all do this to me? And they hate the world, they hate people. And they're the bad child Gemini who tries to be very manipulative and pull a lot of strings and make people pay for rejecting them, make society pay. The third alternative is to think, well, society is really screwed up if they rejected me. This is the more intelligent response, actually. And therefore, I'm going to fight against the evils of society. But the thing is, because they feel the emotional self is running the show in second stage, the intellectual self is running the show in first stage, the emotional self is running the show in second stage, and because they feel that society is still so much bigger and more powerful, this third type of Gemini will choose really impossible things. It's built at windmills. It's like Don Quixote is that type of second stage Gemini. And then in second, third stage, what's important is nurturing the emotions and supporting their emotional self and learning to be really, truly emotionally vulnerable and have true intimacy, because the second stage Gemini person can't do that. And in third stage Gemini, they actually live their full purpose of taking people ahead in society, but they have contact with their intuitive higher mind. So they are guided in where they try to give these teachings out or these new ideas and how they do it. So they're in the right place at the right time. They're not too far ahead of their time, which was the mistake they made in first stage. They also tend to have a very supportive personal life in third stage Gemini. So that's sort of the very quick rundown on the 3 stages of Gemini. So we're going to be dealing with somebody who's somewhere in that spectrum of the 3 stages of Gemini.
Okay.
And then the moon, it's like the emotional nature. We have the emotional nature of a Sagittarian. And the moon is who we were in other lifetimes. So there's the pattern of the 3 stages of Sagittarius that this person is also dealing with. And whatever stage they're in with the sun sign, they're almost always in that same stage in the moon sign. So in first stage Sagittarius with the first stage Gemini, they're really trusting life as they go about developing their skills. By second stage Sagittarius with second stage Gemini, extreme sensitivity to criticism, because second stage Gemini already is feeling like society could reject me, or I'll make them pay if they do, or I'll please them until it's okay and I have some place in the world, or I don't care if they reject me because I'm living a noble cause, even though no matter how challenging it is. But in second stage Sagittarius, it can go to real extremes, extreme philosophies, or towards the end of second stage Sagittarius, there can be mental breakdown. By third stage Sagittarius, the person is subconsciously remembering all the knowledge they've gathered through many, many lifetimes. So a third stage Gemini Sagittarius combination is going to be bringing in the future and bringing new ideas to humanity, along with all kinds of really valuable philosophical pieces that they offer to others in a very non-dogmatic way. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the spectrum there. And then the rising sign, Leo, is the third component. So we want to kind of bear that in mind as a backdrop for everything else that we're seeing.
How do you know it's a rising sign again?
The rising sign is the sign that's in the cusp of the first house, right here, and it's the ascendant. And that's the symbol. You know that symbol?
Right, yeah. So that's Leo.
Yeah. So you can see this is house 1 and this is house 2. So that's the beginning of house 1. Mm-hmm. And this is the eastern side of the sky when the person is born. Mm-hmm. And this is the western side of the sky when the person is born. And this is noon. This is where the very top of the sky. So at noon, the sun would be right up here shining down on everybody. So as we see, as the planets rise, they go this way around the chart. Mm-hmm. So this person was born at 10:54 a.m. I'm pretty sure. Just double check here. Yeah, 10:54 a.m. And so they're born, it's about an hour, maybe 2 hours before noon. Because then it's the summer, so we've got daylight savings time. Noon's going to happen at about 1 p.m., not at noon time, clock time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why we call it the rising sign, because this is actually the constellation that's in the process of rising at the moment of birth. Okay. And it forms the beginning of the chart. All the houses follow in orderly progression after that sunrise of the soul. That is the rising sign. And we just cut it up into 12 pie pieces. And this 10th house cusp is decided by what's the direct midpoint of the sky. So that's the Imam Coeli. You and I talked about Coeli with Terra Coeli, the umbrella organization that third stage astrology is being presented through. Mm-hmm. And there's the Imam Coeli, that's Imam Coeli is the bottom. This is the medium Coeli, which is the midheaven, which just means the very top of the sky. Imam Coeli is the 4th house cusp, the very bottom of the sky. Okay. Yeah, so one thing we can do, we can look at a couple of things. First thing we want to do, I suppose, is look at the ruling planet, and we can look at, because the sun is the center of the chart, what house is the sun in? In this case, what's the ruling planet of Leo?
What's the ruling planet of Leo? It's the sun.
That's right. So the ruling planet of this chart and the sun, the same planet.
Okay. I was like, for a second. Okay, I get it. It's still there. Knowledge is still there. I just thought it was a trick question.
Yes, it sort of is a trick question. Yeah. There's no other rising sign that's going to give you the sun as the ruling planet. Because in any other chart, you look at the sun and the house that it's in, and that's the house that's lit up. That's the house that's the most important thing to the person's desires, their heart. That's where their heart lies. The ruling planet, the planet that rules the ascendant, is their point of view in life. So, if we use my chart as an example for a moment, we can also use yours, but my sun is in the 7th house, so my heart's desire is about relationships and the public, and just sharing the soul, whether it's on an intimate basis or with whomever comes to work with me. My point of view is in the 6th house. My ruling planet is in the 6th house, so my point of view is analytical, service oriented. And then, do you remember where your ruling planet is?
Is it the 4th house?
Yeah. And your sun is in the 4th house. So your point of view and your heart's desire are coming from the same place. But they're coming at things still a little bit differently, because your ruling planet is the Mercury in Scorpio. So, because we both have Mercury ruling planets, we're both kind of intellectual in our point of view, and we want to analyze things. And with Scorpio, you're going to dig in there deeply. Mm-hmm. But with the Sagittarius sun in the 4th house, your desire is still home and what I create within my home base and my home environment and my partner and my family, and this world that my soul expresses itself through in a private way. But it's more Sagittarian, so it's more diffuse and wide open and open-hearted. It's not as intensely focused as your point of view. There's a slight difference. But in this chart, the point of view and what's the person's heart's desire, they're the same thing. That's always the case for people with Leo rising. Okay. So then what can we say about this person? What is really important to this person?
So I'd look up the sun, right?
Yeah. What's important? What does sun in the 10th house?
So the sun, okay, I know that the sun is my heart's desire, your true self, your identity. Mm-hmm. We look at the 10th house. I'm gonna look at the 10th house. It's your career or role in society, same-sex parent, the outcomes of my efforts, my relationship to the conventional world, and how I act in public situations.
Yep.
So I feel like it would maybe be the relationship to the conventional world. Seems like where this is going. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's their deeper identity, something to do with their deeper identity.
Yeah. Yeah. So so you might guess from that this is not a chart of somebody I know personally. This is a public figure, because that's their whole heart's desire. Yeah. That's where everything is focused. Yeah.
Did I kind of get it right? I don't know.
Yes, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah. It's funny because I'm teaching a friend of mine tarot, and he will say all these things as he's looking at the cards, and then he goes, "Am I getting it right?" And meanwhile, yeah, he's getting it right, but he doesn't know.
Yeah. You don't, I know, you're just basically going off kind of intuition, but kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it is at first. And then after a while, you kind of get a sense of how you're getting a sense of things, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I know another thing we can look at is any aspects that sort of jump out that, if you're looking there and you see anything and you go, oh my God, look at that. So a lot of times the eye goes straight to something in a chart, and the same a whole handful of astrologers, and almost all of them are going to go look straight at that spot.
So there's the one, I'm going to have to think back on my terminology, but there's that red, is it a trine? I can't remember, but it points at that Leo and Gemini 45 degrees ish there. That's what really stands out to me. Yeah.
This?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what stands out to me too. And it's also because it's the very and all the planets are in, this is basically called a bowl, because there's different chart shapes.
Mhm.
And when you've got all your planets on one half of the chart like that, it's like it makes a symbol that's like a little bowl. You could turn it over on its side and you could put fruit in it and paint it if you wanted to. That's the bowl chart. And so this is really the rim of the bowl. And yeah, that's what stands out to my eye the most.
Mhm.
So if we play with that, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get some an opposition we could play with here.
Yeah.
So we have the moon, and the moon is opposing, well, it's opposing the north node, which we haven't really talked about the nodes quite yet, so we'll just sort of let that go for the time being. But it's opposing Uranus and it's opposing the sun.
Right.
So what do you remember about an opposition?
It's when, well, the two planets are in opposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking Gemini and Sagittarius, right?
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Um,
And an opposition, opposition is it's a confrontation, and it's an arranged marriage.
yeah.
So these two things are not getting along very well at first. They have to learn how to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And opposition also has the nature of Saturn. So Saturn is fears. Saturn is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, the second place my eye goes to, and it's a natural place we go to when we're first looking at a chart, in anyone's chart, is Saturn anyway in this chart.
Yeah.
And that's Saturn. And what sign is Saturn in there?
Cancer.
Yes, that's right. Now we did talk about rulerships and exaltations. So Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, and Saturn is exalted in Libra. But Saturn also has a very special dignity, as they call it, in the signs opposite to the signs that it rules and that it's exalted in. So Saturn rules Capricorn. Its domicile means it's at home in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite sign from where a planet is at home is the sign that it's in detriment. So it means that that planet struggles in that sign.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you think about how Saturn and Cancer would naturally struggle there, look at the meanings of Saturn and look at the meaning of Cancer, and tell me why you think that might be difficult.
So Cancer, sensitivity, protectively, nurturing, introverted, maternal, emotional. So it's more on the emotional side.
Mm-hmm.
Saturn is the fears I was born with. I'm afraid that, and my sense of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that could mean that, when we're talking about fears and we're talking about your emotional nature, that could be pretty volatile. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember too, when we're looking at a chart, because this is what I'm starting to teach you about how to weave the parts of a chart together and integrate it into one picture. One very important key is always to go back to the sign and the 3 stages of astrology. So knowing those 3 stages of Gemini we talked about, with this Saturn and Cancer, and we've got a really dominant aspect here that has the nature of Saturn. What might that hint at in terms of what stage of Gemini would this person be in?
I think they'd be in second, because the second is usually where people struggle and evolve the most towards their 3rd stage. So maybe second, third.
Yeah, possibly.
Towards the end, there's it,
Yeah.
that extra push, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, because there's so many emotions in there, I would say maybe they're going into that second, third, or in that second, third, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. Now, one thing about with Gemini in particular, the emotions are the Achilles heel in second stage. Anyway, that's the part that they're afraid is the weak part. That's the part that never got it. It didn't get developed during first stage. Everybody else in all the first stage signs, some kind of emotional development, some kind of emotional contact with others is taking place in first stage. But for Gemini, it's not.
Mm.
And for poor Sagittarius, generally getting people criticize them a lot. So there's not a lot of memory here of a lot of nurturing in those foundational stages. And then we have this real fear around nurturing. Another thing that's interesting is that female signs relate to mother. And so the female signs, every other sign is a female sign. So Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces are the female signs. And male signs relate to the father and our experience with the father. So Aries, Gemini, Leo, I emphasize those two, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Aries. I started with Aries, sorry. So what this chart is really saying is dad is the really dominant parent for this person. Mm-hmm. Where's mom? Well, because father was the dominant parent, sun in Gemini. Father was the parent the child emotionally identified with, because that's what the moon's about, moon in Sagittarius. And the Leo rising is father was the parent that was the example for the child. So dad's everything here. Mom, well, we got Saturn in Cancer. We've got, and Venus is about how mom acted, and Venus is, they're sitting together. So, and the mother is very significant for second, third stage Gemini. A person born into second, third stage Gemini very often has a very close relationship with their mother. So this person was not born into second, third stage. Doesn't mean they didn't go into it later, may or may not have, but we really see the struggle with the emotions that a second stage Gemini has, and the absence of mom, even if she was there physically. Yeah. As far as this child was concerned, dad was everything, and mom was not present or not significant, whichever way you want to look at it. Dad's everything.
So that's why you think that's another pointer to show second stage, probably?
Yeah, for a Gemini, yeah. Not for every sign, but in this case, a sign that the mother is pivotal for in the transition. Yeah. You would want to see more. You want to see more evidence of mom being there in some way. Mm-hmm. So let's go back and think about this opposition between the sun and the moon. And one way to do a really good thing to get into playing with aspects is to really imagine it like it's because we use the old image of the planets are the actors and the signs are the costumes and the houses are the stage that the actors are acting on. Now in stage 10 with the curtains around it is the sun wearing the costume of Gemini, and in stage 4, the audience turns and looks at the other stage because we've got two open with floodlights and different colored curtains, is the moon, and these two are having an argument and a confrontation.
Yeah.
So what might they be? What might you imagine them saying to each other?
If it's second stage Sagittarius, I mean, there's a ton of fear of being rejected. Mm-hmm. The Gemini,
that also would be afraid of being rejected. That's the way in which they actually have that partnership. That's their arranged marriage, is that they both have a fear of rejection.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, but how might they initially be in conflict with each other? And actually in this case, you probably don't even need to look at the signs, just look at the nature of the two planets. Again, thinking we're dealing with Gemini. We're dealing with what Gemini is going through in second stage.
So this is where those three, either they go three ways, right? What did I do?
Yeah. What did I do wrong? I'm going to blame everybody else
Yeah.
and make
Or we're gonna fight
or,
against society, right?
yeah, or I'm going to change the things that are wrong. Yeah.
So I don't know if this is right, but I mean, like, if they're gonna try and change the things that, I don't know how to word this, but there might be a level of like kind of optimism to go a different way, but at the same time they have that fear of being rejected, so it's in opposition. Does that kind of make sense what I'm trying to
Yes.
say?
Yes, it does actually. Yes, it does.
I'm not, I have to get used to articulating myself with it, but it's in my head that,
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And you should always go with those things. And if you're actually talking to a client, you could present it to them exactly the same way you just did to me.
yeah. I think it's just a fear of getting it wrong when you're first, like, it stuff is
I know.
sense to me, but then there's that fear.
Yeah, for sure. Of course. Of course. And because you want to be considerate with working with people and
Yeah.
honor other people's own sense of themselves and their own inherent wisdom, present it as, I kind of get this sense. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, that's a good way.
Yeah. And then I go, yeah, really? Can I think of it? Yes. And then they get a whole other viewpoint on something they've been dealing with for their whole lives. Sometimes that happens.
So it's almost like they have the optimism to move forward and kind of pave through, but at the same time, that fear of being rejected probably pulls them back.
Yeah. Now, the other obvious thing is that Sun is about self-actualizing and Moon is about my emotional needs. And these would come into conflict, especially because second stage Gemini is challenged about their own emotional nature anyway. The Saturn in Cancer is really re-emphasizing that.
Mm-hmm.
So my feelings might be my feelings could be seen as an obstacle to what I'm trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I want my feelings to partner with me and go forward with me. I want my home, my family, support what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, let's look at Uranus and the Moon.
So Uranus is my uniqueness, the thoughts of my generation, the part of my life that can surprise or enlighten me. And the Moon is my emotional nature, my habits, my childhood feelings, my past life patterns. So I like the part about Uranus for this person, the part of my life that can surprise or enlighten me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe my emotional nature. So there's definitely like the internal struggle there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But at the same time, it's the internal struggle is helping them to enlighten them, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing we're really dealing with kind of a 3-planet aspect here, because there's also a Uranus-Sun conjunction.
Right.
So with the Uranus-Sun conjunction, this is a person who wants to be an individual.
Right.
I want to be myself. And this emotional crap is not going to get in my way.
Does that make them a little bit more robotic though?
More robotic?
Yeah, or less like they're less emotional in nature, so a little
Yes.
bit
Yeah.
more,
Yes.
less feely, I guess. Is more.
Yeah. Definitely more. Yeah. Yeah. I would say not robotic in the sense that they're monotone or predictable, but robotic in the sense of having the emotions pushed aside. Yeah, I would say the emotions would definitely be pushed aside. I'm going to be myself, says the Sun Uranus conjunction, and my emotions, you're not going to get in my way, or I'm afraid you could get in my way. you better work with me, because these two planets are together. They're going to try to dominate this one.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because the sun is also a ruling planet, and the sun is a powerful planet anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that's generally known about a Uranus moon stressful aspect, and an opposition is considered to be a stressful aspect, is that usually the mother's attentions to the child have been erratic.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, it could have been circumstances kept pulling her everywhere with this way and that, because dad was probably a pretty dominant person. And I don't really know a lot about this person's childhood. It would be interesting to find out. Or it could have just been her own nature was not very stable, was not very maternal.
Mm-hmm.
So she's there, and then she's gone, then she's there, and then she's gone. So Moon says, poor Moon, which likes security and nurturing and flowing emotion. And there's Uranus. Uranus rules electricity and lightning flashes and unique, unexpected events. You don't want your mommy to be an unexpected event when you're very small. So a Moon Uranus person gets disrupted by that, but they also get used to that in a certain way. So Moon Uranus people also like a lot of emotional space, because that's what they were used to as a child. Mom was there, and she wasn't there. It's upsetting, but then you get used to it and you like your space. So it's just a little lesson about a Moon Uranus aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we'll probably be looking at this one again in the future. I don't know if we'll finish it today. We might. We'll see. I'll just think about it. What do you think about all these planets here in the second house?
So you have Chiron, or I don't know how to pronounce it.
That's right, Chiron.
You have Neptune, and you have is that Jupiter?
Yes, correct. That's right.
And those are the scales, right? So
yes, that's right.
Virgo.
The scales are actually Libra. Virgo rules the second house, but those planets are all in Libra in the second house.
I always mix those two up. So that means, and they're in the second house.
Yes.
So that's a lot of information.
Yes, it is a lot of information.
So the second house is your money, your possessions, and your values.
Yeah.
And then we have Libra. So that's your fairly, cooperatively, justly, working as a team, beautifully, graciously. And then we have Neptune. It's just your dreams, your fantasies. And Jupiter is your physiological nature. So
Jupiter is what?
Your philosophical nature. Sorry, what did I say?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And where I receive my divine grace and my sense of humor.
Mm-hmm. And divine grace can also be where you're gifted and where you're lucky, where things can go well, where life helps you out a lot.
Yeah. So this is interesting because it's their dreams and their fantasies.
Now the Magi Society has a lot of interesting perspectives on planets that either are new or, to me, made sense of Chiron. I didn't really use Chiron much before they brought their perspective out through their studies. Yeah. And their perspective on Neptune is that Neptune is where there's a lot of peace and lasting value in a person's life. And Chiron, to my perspective, based on what the Magi Society has said about Chiron, is, to me, Chiron is trust, where you trust. So if I see all three of these planets sitting in the second house, well, Jupiter is where you get a lot of gifts. Neptune is where there's a lot of peace and stability and things go well. And Chiron is where you trust. What might this say about that person's second house as we put that all together?
I don't know. They look really lucky.
Yeah, that's like, wow, that looks like a great financial situation, basically, when you look at all those planets together.
Be powerful to be together, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know we can look at this some more, and I know this 12th house is pretty interesting too. Let's just look at the 12th house for just a moment. The two planets there. Now Mars is actually so close to the first, it's in both houses, 12th and 1st.
So that's Mars and the upside down one. That is
that one's probably an easy one to remember because it's actually got the first two letters of its name joined together. Pluto, yeah.
So you have Mars and Pluto. So Mars is my aggressions, my sexual energy, how I pursue my goals, probably stands out. How I pursue my lovers, my actions, and my anger. Pluto is my hidden power, my compulsions, the unconscious sensitivity, and collective lesson of my generation.
Yeah.
So again, like I feel like there's this hidden power, like like they're really blessed with whatever their gift is. It seems like they have a lot speaking to that to push that forward.
Yeah, it's true.
True. And if we're talking about compulsions, like maybe that's really helpful for them to pursue their goals and maybe why they're successful.
Yeah, because the 12th house too is the unconscious, but it drives us. Planets in the 12th house can drive us from background. We've got a backseat driver sometimes. There's planets in the 12th house.
Yeah.
So Mars also in the first, because it's really in both. This is and it's in Leo. So it's pretty strong Mars sitting right there on the ascendant. It will really push. And it pushes partially from subconscious levels.
Yeah, and Leo's radiating from the soul, right? So it's really pushing that.
Yeah.
Your soul gift.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm going to tell you who this is.
Who is it?
This is Donald Trump.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Hey. Interesting. So that understands the financial piece for sure, that he's just like he's hit rock bottom a few times, like went bankrupt and then got back again. Like he just seems to always bounce back in that piece.
Yes, it's true.
But he's not as necessarily as sensitive maybe to people interactions maybe, or that's not as top of mind for him.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.